Natalie joins? Okay.
It does. And that's okay. Once, once it's set up and everything, then we can add, we can edit the beginning out. It's fairly unlikely that we'll have lots of
going live
people
right now before Natalie joins? Okay.
It does. We are. And that's okay. Okay. So now what you do is you would click and close that window. See just the X next to it, up on the header, over to the right. You can actually all the way up, further up. See where it says see where it has the X? Yeah, you can just close it. And then we're still live, but it's not getting the echo effect. So you're good. Hi, Natalie.
Hello, how are you?
Awesome. How are you?
All right.
Yay, look at you. Fantastic. Oh my gosh. So we went ahead and went live on YouTube because we're doing things a little bit differently. Normally, I'm the one that kicks off the live feeds.
Okay.
Don't worry, nobody else has joined, but you also don't want to say anything too personal at this point. I'm usually the one that kicks off the live feeds, but I'm in a location where I'm just a little concerned about my Wi-Fi. So I had Sydney kick it off, and when we get to the top of the hour, the other thing we'll do is we'll hit the record button for Zoom, and then that way we have two recordings. We have a backup on Zoom, and we have the live recording on YouTube, and both of those we can edit. So we'll edit out all of this chatter that we're doing right now, and that'll be great.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm very excied for our interview. I noticed as we were going through the videos that there's already been quite a few, a couple dozen views, which is great. Our community is 86 rare moms and about another 50 supporters of rare moms. So that's a pretty high percentage of our community, and that's really the only place that we've been well, that's not true. We've been promoting externally as well. So those could come from inside the community or outside. But I was expecting to see in the single digits, and it was in the double. So I was really happy. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And there was somebody who reached out to me from IFOP. I'll look and see real quickly, what was that? International Fibrodysplasia Ossificans Progressive Association.
Great.
I'm assuming that's one of the rare diseases?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of what we'll do is we'll wait till about maybe like 9:03, 9:04, just give people a chance to join from a tech standpoint. And then if we don't have individuals joining live, don't worry. Our community they're very busy during the day because they're home with their kids and they're managing all these symptoms, right? But we get a lot of people watching it late at night and things like that. But it's hard to ask a practitioner to do a late night session. So we kind of tend to record earlier in the day. That is what our community is spending a lot of time doing, is symptom management. And that's why we felt that this programming would be so amazing because, and I'll say this when we go live, but, there are only treatments for 5% of rare diseases. So even if a family receives a diagnosis for their child, they're really sent home to deal with symptom management. And so there's a lot of
primarily the issue.
Oh gosh, I mean, there's 9,500 rare diseases.
But what are the primary symptoms that they're experiencing?
I know. I guess what I'm saying is there's 9,500 rare diseases, and so the symptoms vary so widely. I can't really give you like a short list. I think it would be reflective of what the primary symptoms are for the general population. They're just exacerbated. right?
Got it.
We have some of our rare mom community are dealing with a lot of seizures, for example, or, high fevers, lots of mobility issues, lots of attention, attention issues, lots of, I would say, congested chest, like congestion can be really, really a challenge. So if you go into any of the Rare Mother forums on Facebook, it's just a constant cycle of chatter about symptom management.
Okay.
And how, holistically, how can we deal with all of the things that we know are making life better for our children, that the medical community doesn't always prescribe. So you've got a lot of moms like acting like hybrid skilled nurses, basically. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and get into it. So, Sydney, if I could have you hit record on the Zoom, then I think we can just jump in. Okay, I see that. All right, fantastic. So my name is Crystal O'Loughlin, and I am founder and CEO of Angel Aid Cares. And I am just so honored and excited to have the opportunity to have this live discussion with Natalie Ledesma. I have a personal relationship with Natalie and a professional relationship. Many of you know that I am a breast cancer survivor. If you don't know that, the good news is I'm 4 years cancer-free, but I have worked with Natalie very deeply and intimately on my own health and wellness, as well as nutritional plans. So I know that she comes from a really informed and effective place. From a professional standpoint, Natalie is so well respected in her field. She works with UCSF. She works with various different cancer centers. I'm going to ask her to supplement her introduction and talk a bit about her background and how she's coming to this moment today. But what we're here to talk about is gastrointestinal health, so gut health. And Natalie was gracious enough to loan us, gift us her 1 hour overview, her 1 hour webinar that she has actually paying clients attending, and in service to our Rare Mother community, allowed us the rights to publish that out. We actually broke it up into 3 different segments so that it would be a little bit more consumable, because there's so much rich information in there. So I encourage you to visit our YouTube page, Angel Aid Cares, and you can watch each of those 3 segments if you haven't already. And then in the meantime, we're just going to jump in. So Natalie, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Honored to be here.
Absolutely. So give us a sense of your background. Like, how did you get into gut health, if we want to just sort of sum it up?
So, gut health is just such a foundation for overall health in every aspect, whatever, condition, health-related component that we're considering. I've been working with oncology for 22 years, and naturally within oncology, we run into various gastrointestinal related challenges. And beyond that, of course, we know so much now that the microbiome is just, flourishing in terms of how everything we can do to diversify and improve the health of our microbiome, how that directly relates to improving our own health overall. So
okay, I have to stop you right.
Okay.
I have to stop you right there, because I know the first thing that moms are going to ask is, what the heck is a microbiome? Right? So can you just go into that for a moment before you go on, so we're all on the same page?
Sure. Our microbiome is essentially it's kind of like all of our bacteria, all of our even fungus, the archaea within our system that is there to help generally produce and create kind of like everything around our system. So it's all of our microorganisms, as well as the collective genetic material that's contained within the human body. And so that's what the bacteria, the viruses, the fungi are that live within our gut. And we have, over probably 100 trillion organisms that are within our microbiome. So with the microbiome is kind of where I, have come along with looking at all these other types of, conditions. And we've been consulting with a company about digestive health for 14, 15 years now. And, I've kind of just continued to, work along that way. And my general perspective is, basically utilizing an integrative and functional nutrition approach. I want to develop practical, client-centered and lifestyle plans that are designed to promote vitality and wellness. And yes, I generally do focus quite a bit with adults during, beyond cancer treatment, but also supporting individuals who are navigating chronic health conditions such as digestive issues, fatigue, brain fog, weight challenges, all in an effort to increase energy, to enhance mental clarity, to reduce systemic inflammation, which we know is linked to virtually every chronic issue, balance our blood sugar, and overall optimize our digestive health.
Oh my gosh. So, okay, so I'm thinking of our community and I'm going, I need all of those things. We know that all our rare moms are essentially and appropriately and lovingly subjugating themselves to their patients, family members, and it's just hard. I mean, the answer or the feedback we get is, I don't have time for self-care. I don't have time to, eat properly. I don't have time to incorporate some big health and wellness, kick. Do you have some just kind of quick hits? Like, what are your high points for a rare mom on what she can do to immediately affect her gut health?
Well, first I would say that just look at the perspective of, definitely many of us, and particularly, all of the rare moms are going to feel so overwhelmed and an inordinate amount of stress, that they're seeing every single day. And diet and lifestyle, I think of as being very empowering. So not so much of I have to do that or I can't do this, but allow it to think just in terms of your the way that you perceive it and kind of the way that you look at it of, oh, this allows me to have some control, because we don't have control over everything, but yet we do have control over what we choose to eat, what we choose not to eat, how we live our life. And there I would just use it more as an empowering tool as opposed to one that's limiting you and restricting you. Beyond just a perspective, what would be just maybe a couple, things to kind of keep in mind, like, okay, I can't have a list of 25. Number one, I would say we want to get more vegetables in. We definitely want to have, vegetables to, basically serve as prebiotics. Of course, they're going to serve as, for vitamins, for minerals, for dietary fiber. There are a host of phytochemicals that are, properties that are going to be focusing on improving our health, but also many of the vegetables are going to serve also as prebiotics. And prebiotics are basically the fuel for our probiotics, our good beneficial bacteria. And that basically means that helps to improve the number of healthy bacteria in our system, but also it helps to diversify those bacteria to allow for more optimal health. So I generally would say just make sure you're getting in vegetables with at least 2, if not every meal that you eat, and not the one slice of tomato on the big burger, but instead I would love to see half of your plate filled with non-starchy vegetables, whatever ones you enjoy. If that's, dark leafy greens, which would definitely have special bonuses, different types of cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, bok choy, kale, family, if they're carrots, if it's beets, if there are some possibly different mushrooms, if it's jicama, leeks, whatever works. And ideally, of course, we love variety, but it's not that you have to eat a particular vegetable. It's really, we want you to eat lots of them and hopefully have a variety of different types of vegetables there. That would be the number one thing that I'd say. Eat a lot of vegetables, figure out ways to get them in your diet, on a regular basis. And then also just to make sure you're nourished, I'll just give you two. Do make sure you have protein with all of your meals, because otherwise we may find, I was speaking with a patient yesterday, really experiencing significant fatigue and weakness and not feeling very well with nausea and diarrhea. And listening to what she was eating and completely justifiable with the symptoms, I realized there was zero protein consumed. Of course, a little bit of protein in some of the, oatmeal, a little bit there, but in general, nothing that was really rich in dietary protein. And that's going to be crucial to really allowing the energy, to repairing muscle tissue damage, to helping to improve, kind of overall system. So I think that's a key piece to make sure we incorporate as well.
Those are great. Those are great tips. And I love the visualization of when you sit down to eat, take inventory of your plate. Is half your plate filled with vegetables, ideally during, lunch and dinner, and then I assume fruits, maybe during breakfast or something like that. So fruits and vegetables, but primarily vegetables. Those are the clincher. And I love the empowerment, and I love the protein. So you gave us three, actually. So thank you for the three, top three. Okay. And then the other thing I would love for you to touch on, and you talk a lot about what's called the gut-brain axis. And it's so interesting, right? Because I think naturally we don't think about how our gut affects our brain. I think of, like, when I start watching the videos, I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about right here, but you're talking about the microbiome, the whole connected experience of our body in relation to nutrition, and also about the relationship, this access between your gut and your brain. So can you talk about that? Because I found it fascinating. We could talk all day about it, but give us like 5 minutes.
Yeah, just a little snippet of that. Basically, what's, I think, really interesting with the gut, one of the components that's so interesting with the gut is essentially it acts as our second brain. And the gut is unique in the sense that it's the only other organ that really kind of has that kind of, function. But the second brain it's basically our enteric nervous system that influences our stress response, anxiety, depressive-like behaviors. It also plays a critical role in the development of diseases and disorders of our enteric and also our central nervous system. And it's this communication that is known as the gut-brain axis. So the gut is basically the only other organ that has its own nervous system. The brain, central nervous system, gut, the enteric nervous system. And this communication is the core, what we consider the gut-brain axis. And essentially it's our first step of that is to nourish the microbiome with real food. And that's how we're able to hopefully help improve and that communication between the gut and the brain. And of course, these are going to influence beyond the stress and the anxiety and the neurotransmitters, our mood, our behavior. It also will influence more physical related components like our weight, our bowel movements, how well nutrients are delivered or are not, our microbial balance. So we kind of have, different levels, and they're all going to be circulating throughout in terms of this communication.
Mm-hmm. So that makes so much sense. And if I was thinking through what you just said, when a mom or myself or anyone gets that kind of brain fog, that kind of mommy brain where they're not thinking clearly or they're very, very stressed, what I'm hearing you say is that there could be kind of this underlying tendency or habit or practice of not necessarily attending to our gut health. Is that safe to say that there's a
Yeah, I mean, I think
relationship
definitely could be. A healthy gut allows for those lines of communication between your gut and your brain to function properly. So if we don't have a healthy gut, that communication may not occur, or it may occur, but at more of a diminished pace or not as efficiently. And then that may end up, resulting in anxiety, depression, stress, constipated, diarrhea, poor, dysbiosis, weight gain, weight loss, these different factors. So it really is definitely kind of, if we have a healthy gut, and that's one of the reasons why we want to promote what we can do to have a healthy gut, is it will allow those lines of communication to function more properly to then have, that more optimal health.
Okay, and so you rattled off a slew of symptoms, and we've been talking about the mother's point of view, which really is our community. That's our mission, is to provide health and wellness for mothers of children with rare disease. Here's what we also know. We also know that because moms are dealing with symptom management for their children, that we're witnessing moms finding all sorts of holistic practices for managing symptoms in their children, whether it be congestion, in their chest or nasal passageways, hyper activity, acting out. We often see seizures. We often see like some really intense symptoms as well. And we get these moms just like swearing by, I've cut sugar out completely. I've, cut out milk and lactose. I've introduced some of these other recommendations. And so could you just talk about kind of what a mom can do to help calm things down in her family using this approach?
Really, there are so many possible options. And it really would depend on what the particular, symptom was that was the number one priority. Even if somebody has 20, where do you start? Because you can't start, particularly with a child, at 20 different things. But even as an adult, like, it's just going to simply be too overwhelming, and you're not going to be able to discern, was A beneficial, or was it B, or was it C, or was it D? So, possibly figuring out what is the number one challenge, that if this was improved, would that help to have me feel that much better? Would that help me to feel better about my child? And so many different areas, but I would say that, it is true, I think, definitely in terms of dairy, for example. One of the challenges that we find with dairy is that when we have digestive disruption, so whether that's an antibiotic, whether that's another kind of medication, if it's chemotherapy, if it's an immense amount of stress, if it's food poisoning, if it was just a poor diet leading up to it, combination of different factors. But if there is digestive distress in any way, generally what will happen is that within our intestinal tract, we have finger-like projections that are called intestinal villi. So for lack of, for our purposes, we're going to use my fingers here for a moment. And basically, these are individual villi. We are, our GI tract is covered with villi. And the purpose of those villi is to provide more surface area. The more surface area that we have, the more ways we have to be able to properly digest and absorb our food. So if we smash our villi, we are going to have, number one, a lesser digestive absorptive surface area to really be able to optimally, use our nutrients. But secondarily, the lactase enzyme, which is of course the enzyme that's used to break down lactose, things that are found within those milk-containing, dairy-containing products, is that typically it resides at the tips of these villi. So if there's a little bit of damage and those villi get smashed down, well, then all of a sudden the lactase enzymes are going to be cleaved off. So then we have, number one, we have a lesser, digestive surface area, but now we also probably have significantly less amount of lactase, within our system because it's been cleaved off. So the ability to tolerate lactose and tolerate dairy containing products could be all of a sudden more difficult. Even if it was like, well, they tolerated it 2 years ago or last year or even 2 weeks ago, but now they don't seem to be tolerating it, or you're unsure, it could be related to that digestive component. Additionally, we do know that casein, which is the protein found in milk and just general dairy products, a little less so in goat and sheep, but more so in cow products, that protein, casein, is definitely known to be more pro-inflammatory. So it's also possible that it could act in a more of an inflammatory role, and that could create and lead to a cascade of inflammatory challenges that could be, disrupting the case. So dairy is one that I would say is a red flag of, is it causing an issue? Is it not? I think it's one to potentially consider. And without taking everything out of the diet, because it definitely can be very overwhelming, I would say that's one consideration. You can also even look at genomics to see, are we more or less likely to have an issue with lactose intolerance? There's a genomic SNP, little piece of the DNA material called MCM6, mini chromosome 6, and that SNP is known to be related to how well we can metabolize lactose or not. So if we know that, somebody does have a, variant, then it may be like, okay, they're more likely to have a challenge. Doesn't necessarily mean that they will, but they may be more likely or less likely depending on their genetics. And then there are, of course, other testing ways we could look at that. The two other areas that I would say, I would wonder, again, this could be though, so many different food sensitivities that could be out there. It could even be a blueberry or sodium nitrate or caffeine or something. But the three probably that I would think of particularly would be, in addition to dairy, be gluten and sugar. And gluten also can act in a very pro-inflammatory way. It definitely can also, possibly alter our brain health in a sense in terms of creating inflammation that may be related to some of the challenges, that we see. Not everyone, I think, is definitely gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive, but we do tend to see quite a bit of gluten sensitivity challenges. That I think that is one that we want to keep in mind as a possible challenge. And then definitely sugar, we know also is one that can be quite problematic, also having a pro-inflammatory, role. And then really just that it's devoid of other nutrient values. You don't typically, add Skittles or, Snickers bars or things to the diet because you're trying to be healthy or trying to add nutrients. Instead, we're doing it probably for comfort food, energy, because it's available, other, kinds of scenarios. But sugar, dairy, and gluten are ones that I would kind of put a red flag. Not necessarily that you have to remove all of those. Of course, if you did, fantastic, but that may send your stress even further through the roof. So let's be reasonable in terms of what would make the most sense moving forward, and then go about it hopefully in a more practical way.
That makes sense. So, okay, so let me recap. So we've talked about the things that you can add into your life as a rare mom. So the perspective that working with diet and nutrition can be an empowerment agent. So we want our moms to feel empowered. So fantastic. Half their plate. We want our moms to have half their plate with vegetables. So be thinking about that, ladies. We want half your plate filled with vegetables. And then we talked about protein and the importance of protein. So we have that sustainable energy, especially since we're spending so much time in the doctor's office and in the hospital under high stress and situations. It's so easy when you're in that cafeteria or just walk in the hall at the vending machine to be choosing not healthy snacks and not healthy food, but just try to grab the almonds out of the vending machine and try to, grab the fruits and the vegetables and the live foods when you're in the cafeteria. And then in terms of symptom management with kids, again, not a recommendation, it's more a consideration to be thinking about looking at lactose, looking at gluten, and looking at sugar as potential sources of challenging behavior and potential different kinds of symptoms that just very broadly, obviously you need to work with your doctor, and that's the mini disclaimer there. But how could our Rare Mom community work with you in the future? What would be a way that they can engage, in addition to watching our videos on YouTube, which you've so graciously allowed us to host for our Rare Mom community? How could moms work with you directly?
Well, typically what I like to do is really personalize, each individual's, recommendation. So it's not a blanket of everyone eat only these foods or don't eat, these other foods. So there oftentimes I would say just doing individual, consultations these days, particularly in light of COVID. I think we've all been become a lot more accustomed to doing many things virtually. So be happy to do individual consultations via Zoom, FaceTime, or even via telephone, to be able to, review and discuss individual cases and what would be some top priorities, and, would there be possible avenues of, perhaps testing, a few different areas to make sure that we're going in the right direction and or help provide a specific direction too. So you're not just, throwing a dart out there and just hoping it lands someplace, but that you really have targeted reasons of why you be pursuing a particular type of regimen.
Yep. And I just want to remind you moms, when she's saying testing, we mean testing for you. We really, we certainly can have Natalie look at the testing for your children, but really what we're talking about is your health and wellness. And some of these really sensitive tests, they have a Dutch test, which has nothing to do with being Dutch. It just happens to be the name, but basically it's a pea on a stick sort of test, and then you mail in, and gives Natalie all sorts of really rich information about what could make a difference to get your body back in balance. And again, I'm just sharing that she's incredibly knowledgeable and very, very, very sensitive and not overwhelming. We take baby steps in these programs, and so I just can't recommend Natalie enough. Natalie, can you spell out your name, your URL for your website, so the moms know exactly where to go if they want to schedule time with you?
Yeah, so the website is www.natalieledesma.com, and Natalie is Natalie, Ledesma, LEDESMA.com.
Awesome. Okay. Well, any final thoughts for our community based on our conversation today?
I think you've done a really wonderful job of just kind of summarizing, everything up. There's so many other avenues that we could, look at and discuss. So without kind of bringing up new topic ideas, because of course we have, what about the ketogenic, and what about intermittent fasting, and what about this and that? And yet we could go on for hours and hours and hours. But I think, like you said, in terms of your summary, I think that really is pertinent. One thing I'll mention that you had, kind of given light to in terms of vegetables and fruits is, if throughout your day, I would love to see, fruits are fantastic because they also provide, fiber, they provide vitamins, they provide minerals. Of course, they do have some natural sugars in there too. Because of that, we don't want to have 9 fruit servings and 1 vegetable. I would love to see double, really, I'd love to see triple the amount of vegetables than you eat of fruit. So if, for example, you're eating 6 vegetable servings, 2 fruits, to kind of just give you a little bit of day-to-day, kind of what kind of like, if you're just out there, what do I think without having to look anything up? Did I have enough vegetables? I didn't have nearly enough for my couple fruits. Then eat more of the vegetables. If you've had a lot of those vegetables, you can certainly have a couple of those fruits as long as they're tolerated and so forth, of course. But just as a general, rule, triple the amount of vegetables than fruits is a good way to go.
Perfect. So that's really, really good clarification. And I think that's the challenge, right? So the challenge has been laid down, ladies. I don't know what you're having for lunch or breakfast or dinner, but in your next meal, and I'm going to make the commitment, in my next meal, I'm going to follow Natalie's advice and fill half my plate with vegetables. So you have my commitment. You have my thanks. Thank you so much, Natalie, for today. We will get this, up and out to the group. We'll do some editing. I'm going to ask that we go ahead and stop all of the recordings now. And thank you all for tuning in. Really, really appreciate it. We'll see you in our community soon.